Hi, Steve Hawkins, head coach, Jordan River Group, and coming to you with the second installment here on a really interesting topic around quiet quitting. And, I have my Wii Connect Cards here. I don't know if you've ever heard of this company, but the website is we and .me, uh, we and .me. And these are just really cool cards because what they are made to do, and you get a ton of cards, all different colors, but there's ways and prompts to just start some conversations, and everything from just something simple. The green cards are kind of fun and light and easy. The the purple cards are self-reflection, and then the blue cards get to some deeper topics that maybe you want to make sure the room is safe and the group is comfortable with each other. But I grabbed these because in our second episode of Quiet Quitting, we're going to talk about a really important, helpful um, topic and helpful dimension of quiet quitting, or how to prevent quiet quitting. And that's all around fostering an employee voice. But I wanted to share, first of all, just a quick recap. So if you haven't seen episode 1, go back and check that out. But we're talking about the topic where employees are becoming disengaged, right? And whatever the reasons are, we're diving into some self-reflection. Do we own some of the responsibility, and what are some things we can change? But the difference between employees that are all in and excited and motivated and wanting to do extra and participate in problem solving and really leaning forward, all the ways we would describe engagement, versus the employees that are slipping backwards and kind of regressing and atrophying and not participating, and maybe doing the very bare minimum, or less than that, even, as we mentioned in the first episode of the job description. Why is that? We're going to talk about another reason, but we talked a little bit about the contractual transactional relationship of employee and employer versus a relational one, and ways we can build and change on that as today's employee. You and I even want and desire and require that. But today, hey, episode 2, we're going to talk just a little bit about fostering employee voice. And what are we talking about? When quiet quitters start to kind of get inside themselves, one of the things you'll notice is they're not speaking up that much. They're not participating in meetings. They're not offering ideas. They're not even answering questions sometimes, let alone giving opinions. And why is that? Well, it's kind of the backwards wait and see approach, or back, and I'm not going to offer much more. I'm just going to do the bare minimum. According to my job description, these are tasks. I don't really need to have conversations. I don't need to give opinions. There's not enough there for me to offer that part of myself, right? So the communication quotient really drops. And remember, this part of it kind of comes out through relationships, supportive relationships, safe to talk, for instance, just being in a safe environment where the things I have to say, the ideas I have, are listened to and cultivated and honored. Whether or not they get actioned is not as important as whether there's the perception that they even got listened to, right? And so if that's been damaged, or a negative experience happens, then people may just decide not to make that investment any longer. And so when we have that attachment broken, that's what happens. People start to slide back, and voluntary speaking up just doesn't happen anymore, right? And you see it. You know, when you really have to ask direct questions to get information, it's like kind of talking to your kids. If back in the day, if you had children, or you have children now, it's like no information is forthcoming, right? Not a conversation. Like, ask me a direct question, I'll give you a direct answer. And it's like, oh my gosh, come on, can't this be easier? And that's exactly what happens with our teams. It's like, how was yesterday? Good. No, like how'd the project go? Fine. They're like, oh, come on, give me more. What'd you do? What'd you create? How'd you solve something? What can we do today? How can we solve for tomorrow? None of these things are happening. All right. And again, that's because the relationship is perceived to not be of value, right? The environment maybe is not safe enough to have that dialogue. Other things are just saying, I'm tapping out, I'm not interested, and this is one of the ways I'll show it. So what can we do to action the employee voice, right? The employee feeling, their perspective, their contribution, all right? Well, the first thing you can do is say, one, admit maybe this is an issue. I see this. I'm not hearing the voice of my employee, so I need to take a look at this. And the first thing we can think about is, making a concerted effort to understand your employees. All right. Are we just trying to solve problems? Are we gathering information just to make the next move? Are we asking questions just to quantify their work? Are we wanting feedback just to determine whether they did what you said they were going to do or wanted them to do? Or can we ask questions to really understand? Can we inquire with the real transparent intention that we want to know? I want to understand what this experience is for you and how you're doing and where you're at. Okay. And the second thing we can do then is, when we hear that, to validate what they said. All right. It doesn't have to be a right or wrong discussion, or even a right or wrong contemplation in your head. Just getting them to speak and then validating what they said, making sure it's correct in your head, making sure they know you heard them correctly. Is this what you said? You can restate and just validate that. All right. Plays a big role in them saying, hey, that's worth doing again. At least my supervisor heard me and took the time to listen to me. That banks an employee voice encouragement credit, if you will. All right. And so that's a great one. I think the other thing is, after we kind of go through the understanding part, is somehow conveying that we support employees. And this gets confusing because sometimes we think if we show support, we're endorsing their work, we're endorsing their ideas, we're endorsing their effort. We're kind of jumping on their bandwagon. And that doesn't have to be the case. Supporting can come in all shapes and sizes and looks. Everything from listening, again, we talked about validating, and then even taking an effort to resource something that you do deem as important enough. All right, resourcing them to help them get the job done, or help them with an idea that they have that you do feel is safe enough to try. You can do such tiny experiments that bank humongous ROI as far as the recognition of their voice for you. We want employees to talk more, all right, and contribute more, and not be a quiet quitter, and yet we don't invest in these simple ways to show that we care, that we want to hear from them, and it's less about the actual content sometimes than just the ability to have a dialogue. All right. So investing in those two things, again, the opposite sometimes is what is experienced, and whether it's true or just their perception, we have to examine that, right? Abusive, not listening, uncaring, unsupportive communication. It's all filtered through what will you do for me today, as opposed to how are you today? What can I do for you today? Right? This has nothing to do with performance, right? This is just a building block of listening, so that in return you get what you're hoping for: the voice of your employee, the contribution of ideas, the contribution of feedback, right? The full report of how the shift went are really important things that we go after, all right? Clearly, we have this experience as well. So if you get in a tough spot and have a hard time understanding how to action this with your team, just journal and reflect a little bit about how you'd like this action for yourself. Think about a boss that you have or have had that you felt has squashed your voice, and what that experience was like, or a boss that really encouraged you to speak. And how did they do that? What things did they do that gave you permission to, to be bolder with your voice, with ideas, with information, with thoughts, with solutions? And just try to mirror that and understand that, the way we treat employees is likely going to be reflective in the effort we get. Do we get an engaged effort, or do we get a quiet quitter effort? All right. Let me know if you have any ideas, suggestions, or follow-up comments to this, and hopefully this will helpful. Stay tuned to episode 3.